everybody knows, but I thank God that you all prayed for me, and I feel so much better, and ready to talk some more on today. But as I was asking the Lord what He wanted me to talk about on this week, I know we talked about last week on conditioning our minds, but several weeks earlier I started talking about the growth and the development process, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about that on today, and of course I actually get into the development process. Everything that we gain in this life comes by way of struggle, and comes by way of pain. But the Lord wants us to keep progressing in our life, and this is the reason why we go through many of the situations that we go through, so that we can come out of being babies and develop into the people of God that we have been anointed to become. So I began to think about the Egyptians and how they were enslaved in Egypt, and of course when they went into Egypt, there was a few of them. They went in with a handful, and then they grew into 1,000,000 strong. And because they had grown to that particular size, the Egyptians became threatened by them and enslaved them. And the Lord never wants us to come to a place of enslavement in our life. He never wants us to outgrow a place to where we're enslaved to a situation. But when we get to that place, then He's ready to call us out and move us into a place of development. David served his father Jesse, and served his father Jesse faithfully, and that was his growth process. But once he was anointed to be king, he immediately went to the development process. And the development process is the place where we become. We become the thing that we're anointed to be. And the Bible says that we are to be transformed by the renewing of our mind. So that we can prove that God's will is good, that God's will for our life is perfect, and God's will can be accepted. And that word transformed, of course, the Greek, I believe, is metamorpho, which also means metamorphosis. But it means that our whole life has to be changed, that we're no longer what we used to be. David was no longer a shepherd boy, but in that development stage, he became king over Judah, and eventually he became king over all Israel. And of course, the development process takes time too. It takes just as much, or maybe more time than the growth process. Oftentimes we'll get a word, just like David did. He was anointed, but he didn't immediately become king. He had to become king. And the place of development, again, is the place where we become who God called us to be. So in the growth process, we become greater, and we enlarge in strength. We talked about that, and we enlarge in size, and we enlarge in extent, in our influence, and in our value, and our worth. But development brings us to the place of maturity, and it's a place of advancement. It is a place of evolution, or progressive or accelerated change. We have to evolve, and we can no longer be who we were 5 years ago. Matter of fact, we can't be who we were on last year, but we have to continue to progress. Even though the Lord changes not, the Bible says that He's the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. But we will never catch up to where God is, because He just is, and He is all wise, He is all knowing, and He's a progressive God, and He is so massive and so expansive that I believe it'll take us an eternity to get to really know who God is. So therefore, we've got to continue to progress and continue to advance, and in the development stage, again, our advancement becomes more accelerated. So we're expected to grow. We grow in Egypt, but we develop in the wilderness, and the place of the wilderness. Oftentimes, we talked about the wilderness experience, and how bad the wilderness is, and I think I'm going to do a teaching on that as well. But the wilderness is a place where we find out what our capabilities are, where we really begin to use everything that we learned in the growth process. And at some point, we grow, we go to school, and then we graduate from school, and hopefully we begin to walk into things that we learned in school. And it is the same in our spiritual life. We go through the growth process where we learn submission and we learn faithfulness and all those other things that we talked about. But then now we've got to put into action the things that we've learned. The Bible says faith without works is dead. And we got to get to, in the development stage, we get to the working. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And we get to the working out of everything that the Lord put in us to do and to be. Again, when David was anointed, he didn't immediately go straight to the palace. He had to become a king. Joseph had his development process after he was when he was thrown into the pit, and then when he was thrown into jail after coming from Potiphar's house. And oftentimes, again, we'll get a glimpse of what the Lord is saying to us, and we immediately think that this is it. David went, it's kind of the same thing with him. He went from his father Jesse's house and went to the palace, but he was only in the palace for a little bit of time before Saul lost his mind and tried to kill him. But then he had to go on his own wilderness experience and begin to develop into a king. I believe that right now in my life I'm in my development process. You may end up pastoring a church or whatever, but unless you've been pastoring a long time and you become installed in another church, you have to develop into the type of pastor or into the type of prophet or into the type of whatever it is that God has called you to be. There's a time of development. None of us come out the womb mature. We don't come out. We may be equipped with everything that is in us, but we got to learn how to use our arms. Got to learn how to use our legs. We got to learn how to use our thinking and our reasoning process, and it's a process. So let's see how much time I have. I actually think I'm gonna have to take a break right here, and then we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about the development process. The place of development is actually the place where we're set forth, where things begin to be made clear by degrees or in detail. In other words, everything begins to unfold or become clearer little by little. I remember about 10 years ago, I received a prophecy, and actually my daughter found the tape or the CD or whatever it was, maybe about a couple of months ago. And as I listened to it, everything that the prophet was speaking those 10 years ago was where I am now. And of course, when I got that word back then, I thought, okay, well, I thought it was for where I was, but it wasn't for where I was. It was for where I was going. And when we get into the stage of development where we're becoming what God has called us to become, we could go back, we could pull back on those prophecies that we got, and they'll begin to be made clear. We sing the song that says, "You'll understand it better by and by." But and I used to think, well, that by and by was whenever we got to heaven. But there's a by and by time in this present life where what God has spoken to us begins to make sense, and it begins to manifest. His word will come to pass. Whatever he's spoken to you will come to pass. And once again, we're in that place of development in our life, then we'll begin to see what God has spoken to us unfold. And everything will begin to make sense. I promise you it'll start to make sense. All the trouble that you're going through in your life, all the struggles, all the experiences, and the place of development is where you begin to take the experiences that you had in your growth process and put them into action. Again, another word, a definition of the word develop means, again, to make visible or to manifest. But it also means to make active or to activate what is in you, make it operative or set it into motion. I think about all the things that I learned whenever I was serving under my pastor, and there were so many things that I learned how to do, and I wondered, why? And I thank God for giving me the opportunity to experience those things and to learn those things, because now in this place that I'm at in pastoring, I'm able to take all of those things that I learned in my growth process and make them active. And cause them to go forth and expand on everything that I learned. Again, the place of development is our place of expansion. It's a place that we find out who we really are. And we get to expand on our training, get to expand on our knowledge, and we get to expand on on what God has said about us. So it also is the development stage. Is a place where we go into greater opportunities. I love that, for effective use. Opportunities will begin to come, and David. I thought about David in the cave. And when he was in a cave, all these men came to him, and these were his opportunities to begin to rule, and because he had to set up the army, and it was something that he never had to do before. And I'm sure that he had some type of responsibility when he was tending his sheep. He had to count the sheep. He had to pray. Was responsible for taking the sheep to be the wool to be cut off, and had to give a report to his father and all these other things. And those little things that he was doing in his growth process, now he's doing them in a greater manner. And now he's dealing with people. So now, and I know, sometimes people are like sheep. As a matter of fact, the Bible calls us the sheep of his pasture. So David now had all of these opportunities to effectively use whatever he learned, and we want to be effective. We want the work that we do to be effective. And we'll never get to that place of effectiveness, of course, if we're not in the place of developing who we are. I was thinking, we have so many people in our ministries with gifts, and we as pastors, we hold on to them. We don't want to let them go. We don't want them to move out, because we're afraid of losing them. But if we would allow them and make room for them to develop where they are, and give them opportunities to use their gifts and to expand on their gifts, we will see a great increase in the effectiveness of our own ministries, and also in the effectiveness of the people that we're afraid of losing. But of course, we as pastors, we hold on to people for dear life, and we think there's some indictment against us if people leave us. But we have to allow people to be able to develop into who God says that they are. The people aren't our people. They're God's people, and we have the right to hold on to them. But again, we just give them room to grow, and not just grow, give them room to develop into who they are. Then not only, again, will their lives be affected, but our ministries will be more and more effective. And also, get off that little soapbox there, but also the word develop means to cause to evolve again, or to unfold gradually. And again, it takes time. Just as the growth process takes time, the development process takes time as well. We want everything rushed, and we want to be through, and want to be king. And I'm sure again when David was told that he was going to be king, he had no idea that it was going to be almost 17 years later that he would actually be anointed to be king. And he had to go through all of that process, running from Saul, and all the things that he went through with his children, and all these different people that were after him, and all these different situations, and all these different battles that he had to fight. And it took time for him to be able to get to the place to really become who he was anointed to be. And again, we have to become the person that we're anointed to be. Yes, he was anointed king, but now he had to become a king. You may have been anointed to be a pastor, a prophet again, or whatever, but then you have to become those things. And we don't like the becoming portion. We want to just be, but you have to again evolve into those things. So also it also means to lead or conduct through a succession of states. In other words, we go from place to place. We go from condition to condition, and also changes, each of which is preparing for the next. Again, David went from being anointed at his father's house, and then he became anointed over Judah, and then he became anointed over all of Israel. So there were different states that he was in different conditions in his life, and all were in preparation for the next. There's always a next. God said, I will do a new thing in you. He wants to do something new. And that phrase, new thing, means something fresh and something unheard of in your life. And God always wants to continue to do something new and something fresh in our lives. As I said earlier, God is progressive, and He wants to do progressive things in us.
But somebody say, I'm covered. I'm covered. Somebody say, hey, I'm covered. Hallelujah. I am covered under the blood of Jesus. My sins have been covered. They've been washed. I've been washed whiter than snow. Hallelujah. I don't care what you think about me. I don't care what label you put on me. I'm covered. Hallelujah. I'm covered. I'm covered. I'm covered under the blood. I'm covered under the word. I'm covered by the Spirit of God. I am covered, and God's got me. Hallelujah. I may forever look to you like a crackhead. I may forever look to you like an alcoholic. I may forever look to you like an adulteress, but I'm covered. Hallelujah. I'm covered.
Before we took our break, I was going on a rant about us pastors. I can say this because I'm a pastor, and so I don't want anybody to think that I'm railing on pastors. I'm talking about myself too when I say these things, and I had to learn, very, very quickly, that nobody comes to us to stay. And we have to be willing and understand that there's a possibility that there may be people that come to us that are connected to us throughout the lifetime of our position or our place in ministry. Just as Elisha was connected through a lifetime to Elijah. And then there are some people that are in our presence to grow. And some people are just there to get to the growth stage, and then some people are there for the growth and the development stage of their life. And who they become, again, will be an asset to you, and an asset to me, and to the ministry. But if you remain in your growth process for a long period of time until you outgrown it, it'll eventually become your place of enslavement. And I talked earlier about the Egyptians, or about the children of Israel, how they became enslaved in Egypt. And that word enslavement means oppression. There'll be unjust treatment or control. You know, you'll see people trying to control you, and trying to keep you under their thumb and keep you submitted to them. And because of the large number of Israelites, the Egyptians were afraid of them, and so therefore they had to control them. And their way of controlling them was by oppressing them and by enslaving them. And of course there'll be exploitation, which means treating someone unfairly in order, again, to benefit from their work. And some of you are in that situation right now where where you're being treated unfairly, and somebody else is benefiting from your work, and you're unable to grow and unable to develop. Well, you've grown, but you're unable to develop to that place that the Lord wants you to become the person He called you to be, because somebody is trying to make their name great, and trying to make themselves look good, and they're benefiting from your work. The Egyptians had a lot of benefit from the children of Israel. It also becomes your place of persecution, and persecution means hostility or ill treatment because of race, beliefs, and you become annoyed, or they're annoyed with you, and then you get to be harassed by people. Oftentimes when people don't understand you, they become annoyed with you. You're pushing because you know that there's something in you. You know that God has called you to do something, and they don't understand. They want to keep you in the place that they believe that you've been called to be, and now they're annoyed with you, but they won't let you go, and so they begin to persecute you. And begin to say things to you like, well, God didn't call you, or you're not this, or you're not that, and so on and so forth. And that's because you're stuck in that place of growth, and God is trying to move you to a place of development, and now you're again in a place of enslavement. It also becomes a place of suppression. And that word suppression means being put down by authority or force. We're not dictators. As I said earlier, we don't own the people, and the people aren't ours to do what we want to do. And we're so afraid, as I said earlier, of people leaving us, and people walking away from us, till we use the authority, because the Bible tells people that they're to submit to the authority. But we take that authority and we abuse the people with the authority, and then we force them to stay in places where God did not call them to be, or God did not call them to remain, and we're going to be accountable for those things. So again, the place of development becomes a place of suppression when you've outgrown the place, and there's no room for you to move, or no room for you to develop into places. I was thinking about, and we have people in our churches that are maybe gifted, or that may have a calling for battered women, or may have a prison ministry, or whatever, and because that's not what we do in our churches, in our ministry, we don't give them an opportunity to go forth and do those things, because we think that we're so worried about them going off and starting their own ministry and starting their own church, that again we don't allow them to develop when they could go out and do that ministry, out where God called them to do, and then they're helping your ministry as well. They're helping your ministry by bringing people in who can also be trained and who can also get to the place of development. But we suppress their gifts, and we don't allow them to fully be who they are, and that's a dangerous place to be in. So again, when you're in a place of suppression or a place of enslavement, you grew there, but you were not permitted to get to the next process or progress to the next level. And again, we have to allow people to progress it to the next level. And I'm not saying all this for anybody who's sitting there watching and thinking, oh, this is me, and this is a good reason for me to leave my church. No, it isn't. because you don't leave until you're released to leave. The children of Israel, as bad as their situation was, and all the hardships that they went through, the Bible says that the Lord heard their cries. He heard their cries, he heard their groanings, and he sent somebody to deliver them. And, as I was saying on last week, talking about how quick we bolt from ministries. And, I stayed where I was for 36 years until the Lord released me. And it was through his mighty hand that he did release me, but it cost me, and it cost me more than I could say. But I had to go and do what God told me to do so that I could get to the place of development. And he sent Moses to tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And God will send somebody. He'll send a situation. He'll send an event. He'll send something in your life in order to get you to that place of development. The Lord doesn't want us to have a arrested development. He wants us to be able to, again, become everything that he has intended us to be. And Lord willing, when we come back on next week, we're going to talk a little bit more about the development process, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the wilderness experience. So continue to pray for me this cold. Hopefully on on next week or so, I will be, I don't want to say normal because I'm certainly not that, but I'll be able to start feeling back to my old self again. So God bless you all, and may the Lord shine upon you, and may your life increase in all of his blessings.